I'm Nick, and if you've been trying to conceive and either your doctor says everything tests normal or maybe you have some labels like unexplained infertility, a diagnosis that has prevented you from having the baby and family of your dreams, then I need to tell you a lot of things. The truth is that your body is actually protecting you by prioritizing your survival today over reproduction for tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you exactly how this is a blessing, not a curse. These symptoms are not God withholding blessing from you. They're your body speaking truth, giving you the opportunity to heal what's been going on for years. And that is a gift. The reason is that we're just using the wrong map of biology. The old map of the medical system has given us as if fertility is all about hormones: FSH, AMH, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, all these things. But here's the thing that most people don't seem to know is that hormones are not the problem. Those are just small carbon-based signaling molecules. They're not the decision makers, but the result of a decision. They're the downstream signals that your cells create to tell you whether your body has enough resources, safety, and energy to create and sustain a baby. And right now, that decision is being made for your protection. And I'm going to explain all of it if you watch this whole video. Because treating hormones without addressing what's upstream is like collecting pollution at the end of a river, not stopping the source upstream. And how long are we going to do that? And to be honest, not a lot of people are trained to look upstream, and the current medical system is not really set up for it. So when my wife and I were struggling with chronic metabolic problems, gut dysfunction, hormone imbalances, feeling cold all the time, a bunch of other seemingly random disconnected symptoms, at first I wasn't asking the right questions. Now, I taught chemistry for 10 years, but once I got a master's degree in biochemistry, everything started to make sense. But you don't have to do that, and that's what this whole video is for. I was trained to ask the right questions, to identify and address the right constraints, and to solve problems systematically and efficiently. Just following the map that we've been given. Track your hormones, take these supplements, and keep trying. And if that doesn't work, there's always IVF. The truth is, we're still not really addressing the real issues. We're just kind of bypassing them. And instead of asking, why won't my body work? A different question. What if my body is working perfectly like God says that it does, but what does it know that I don't? And later, all of our prayers and questions were answered. You know, the average couple spends well over $50,000 over 2 to 3 years on scattered solutions like supplements, acupuncture, different practitioners, maybe an IVF round or two, without finding out the truth about why. They're spending a fortune trying to fix symptoms while the root causes don't really get identified or addressed properly. And eventually things get worse and then passed on to our kids. And that was almost us. So how did we discover this? Well, I experienced some really intense grief and loss soon after finishing my master's degree. So naturally, I turned to PubMed as a coping mechanism to read scientific research to find any answers. And I discovered how the body actually works in connection to the rest of nature. You see, the old map has us focusing on the wrong things. And once we understood and applied this new map of biology, everything changed for our family forever. Both of our chronic and strange and seemingly disconnected symptoms just disappeared. My wife got pregnant, and we trusted our biology so much that we've now had 2 healthy home births with a third on the way. It was incredible for them to be born in the comfort of our own home because we trust our bodies and we trust God's design. So if you're ready to stop following the wrong map, to stop collecting pollution at the end of the river, to stop painting brown leaves green, and to stop skipping steps that your body needs in order to restore itself, then please watch this whole video. And so in this, I'm going to share 3 specific things. First, we're going to talk about the whole new map of biology. Most people are trying to navigate fertility without really understanding how nature works. You're overwhelmed with conflicting information, trying everything that influencers recommend. You're exhausted from scattered effort, still no baby, and not much clarity. I'm going to show you the new map, how nature actually works through what I call the 4 pillars of health. Second, I'm going to show you your place on the map, because once you have the map, you need to know where you are, not someone else. And that's what we call point A. What is the actual status of your body and its systems? Most people don't know because they've never tested for the right things or asked the right questions. And third, I'm going to show you how to go from point A to point B. Because once we have the map and we know our starting point, we need the exact sequence to get to where we want to go. Not random protocols, not generic advice that might have worked for a few others. And let's be clear about point B as well, like what you actually want, which is not just a positive pregnancy test. You want a healthy conception, a healthy pregnancy, a healthy birth, a healthy baby, and a healthy family for generations. Like, that's what we're really aiming for, right? And if so, then I'm going to show you exactly how to get there with just these 4 pillars. But before we get to the map, we have to talk about how this map is different. Because you think you know how the body works, like circulatory system, respiratory, nervous, digestive, musculoskeletal, and for fertility specifically, the endocrine system. But there are really four systems that exist above them and through them, and every single one of these four systems affects the structure, function, and communication of every single cell in your body. So when we shift our focus to a more accurate map of biology, we don't really have to work as hard. Like, do you see the efficiency of this approach? We're addressing everything all at once without doing so many different things. And that's the power of systems thinking. Because these four foundational systems aren't separated in isolated compartments like modern medicine treats these things. They're a series of deeply interconnected and woven layers of how nature is organized at its most fundamental levels, and how it continues to exist around the planet. There is a living, breathing, intelligent, and beautiful ecosystem within each pillar. Nothing in nature exists in isolation, but yet that's how most humans have studied it. I've learned that there are four foundational layers that created life in the first place. Two layers of chemistry and physics, depending on how far you zoom in, and three layers of intelligence that make decisions based on environmental information. One of them is both, and you'll see why. And all four of these pillars are in constant relationship and unity with each other because they all depend on each other. And when you put all this together, you have the most comprehensive framework that explains not only everything in nature, but they guide us towards health for the rest of our lives. And something really special happens when you turn this head knowledge into heart wisdom, because that's how you end up leading your family into health for generations. So, right now, what I need you to do in this moment, as you're watching this, you need to be present in as many moments as possible, starting right now. So if you're going to be doing something while watching this, like scrolling, cooking, folding laundry, like, please stop. Slow down, listen to what I'm about to tell you, because focusing on being present on one thing might be one of your first steps. And another thing, there's power in handwritten notes, like when it comes to absorbing and retaining information, which should be common knowledge at this point, but most people don't do it anymore. So grab a pen and paper if you can, if you want to. Because here's what we're going to be doing together. We're going to be working smarter, not harder. No more scattered effort, no more random protocols, no more wasted money, and no more guessing. All right, so let's start with the map. And not by starting with symptoms, but by diving through the layers of how reality and nature itself works. From diverse ecosystems, and then we'll move to within the cell, and then into atoms and molecules, and then even beyond to the quantum layer. Each layer is more progressively fundamental than the last. So the first layer, we're talking about the organisms that inhabit you. Some of the smallest organisms in the universe, called bacteria. And together, these bacteria, fungi, parasites, all these organisms are what's called the microbiome. And over the last 20 years or so, scientists are calling it the second brain, discussing its importance in all of health. And what we tend to focus on with the microbiome is that of the gut. But in reality, these organisms are everywhere. Every single organ has its own microbiome. And so with this new map, we're starting with the most visible layer, the ecosystem, where the old and fearful map says to kill bad bacteria, parasites like weeds. But the new map says that every organism is there for a reason, and they're responding intelligently to the environment that we've created. As researchers noted in the journal titled Microbiome in 2025, quote, "The microbiome plays a crucial yet underexplored role in women's reproductive health. Microbial communities produce substrates that support metabolic, immune, and hormone functions, which affect fertility, pregnancy outcomes, and offspring health." Right now, you have trillions of organisms living in and around your body, bacteria, fungi, parasites, where you actually have more microbial cells than you do human cells, making you one of the most densely populated ecosystems on the planet. And the microbiome tends to be the junction between the outer world and your inner world. So going back to the gut lining is one cell thick, one fragile layer of cells separating everything that you ingest from getting into your bloodstream. And your microbiome is the gatekeeper of what enters, what gets transformed, and what gets eliminated. Gut bacteria actually produce much of our neurotransmitters like serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and 70% of the immune system cells sit on that gut lining, where the microbiome literally teaches them how to respond, when to tolerate, and when to stand down. The microbiome trains the immune system through repeated low-grade carbon-based signaling that calibrates threat detection, tolerance, and inflammatory tone. So when that relationship is disrupted, immune overreaction or misdirected inflammation becomes much more likely. And over time, if the reasons for the inflammation are not addressed properly, which we'll talk all about that, then the immune system becomes exhausted, anxious, and stressed out. These bacteria also communicate directly with your brain using electricity, which are electromagnetic frequencies called biophotons through the vagus nerve. And they communicate with your cells via those neurotransmitter chemicals. But here's what most people get wrong. They think that certain organisms are invading them, attacking them, and making them sick. But when your body is under stress, that we'll talk all about, like toxicity, cellular inflammation, nutrient depletion, psychological threat, your microbiome changes, and some of these organisms help you survive because they're adapting to that new environment. Like when the body shifts from reproduction to survival, several environmental changes occur within the gut, like lower vagal tone, reduced bioflow in stomach acids, lower motility, altered mucus layer, higher oxidative stress, more undigested proteins and carbs, mineral shifts, damaged cells, inflammatory signaling, and heightened immune response. All of these environmental changes cause shifts within the microbiome composition, and some of these organisms kind of help you out a little. These changes create new ecological niches where certain microbes thrive not because they're malicious, but because they're adapted to fit those changes. Bacterial species expand not randomly, but because the internal terrain favors them. So based on the old map, if we eliminate these organisms without correcting the environment that's selected for them, the ecosystem will simply rebalance back to what the terrain supported. So that's why all these detoxes and cleanses don't really work. Like we got to address the actual reasons why the bacteria and organisms are there in the first place. I like to think of the microbiome like a forest. If the soil is healthy, balanced, and well watered, you get strong trees, diverse plant life, and a resilient ecosystem. But if the soil becomes dry, acidic, or disturbed, different plants will take over. Not because they're evil, but because they're the ones that can survive in those new conditions. They're called opportunistic bacteria, like Candida, Klebsiella, H. pylori, and certain strains are like the weeds that grow after a forest fire or drought, or if the soil is depleted. They simply thrive in the environment created by the drought or the depletion. They do not cause the drought. So if you pull the weeds, but never restore the soil, they're just going to grow right back. Now, one of the microbiome's most critical jobs for fertility is metabolizing estrogen through a series of gut bacteria that routes estrogen through one of these pathways, like a chemical fork in the road. We'll talk about that a few times. The 2-hydroxy pathway is the safety route where estrogen is used as a regulatory signal supporting normal cell turnover, detox, reproduction without much inflammation happening. While the 4 or 16-hydroxy pathways are the stress route where the estrogen is used as a short-term alarm signal activating the immune defense and tissue growth during threat that estrogen can be used for. Now those numbers 2, 4, and 16 are just telling us where the hydroxyl group is located on which carbon, so it's a different message, but it's still estrogen. And the microbiome decides which route based on your body's current state. Certain bacteria help estrogen clear safely, while others produce an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase that cleaves the bond and releases estrogen back into your bloodstream, which is why gut health is a huge factor in any hormone imbalance. Thus the importance of high-quality, nutrient-dense foods from regenerative ecosystems. So when your microbiome is dysregulated, when certain organisms dominate because of our current environmental conditions, years of toxicity, 24/7 stress that we'll talk about later, you can't really properly eliminate estrogen, and it's hard to absorb nutrients that well either. It's hard to produce neurotransmitter signals, and then your nervous system perceives even more stress across the systems, accumulated situations of threat, not to mention how important the microbiome's relationship is with the immune system, especially during implantation of the fertilized egg. If your immune system is constantly recognizing threats, it's going to recognize even more things as threat, thus significantly reducing implantation. When we address the reasons why these organisms are there, then they tend to leave on their own. But here's what really breaks my heart is that every single month that our microbiome stays dysregulated because we don't know what we're doing, the dysfunction deepens. More organisms start to grow into more of these niches, more inflammation, estrogen metabolism gets more chaotic. It's a downward spiral, and this is making conception harder. Time doesn't pause while we keep guessing. And in a little bit, I'll show you the exact test that reveals which organisms are dominating your gut, which imbalances you have, what's your digestive function like, and why. So that's the ecosystem level. And now what we're going to do is zoom into the cell itself, your human cells, where the real energy decisions are being made. So pillar number 2, the mitochondria, where the old map says, you remember what mitochondria are, right? Powerhouse of the cell. But that makes it seem like it's an industrial, lifeless energy factory. The new map of biology says that they are conscious decision makers, processing food, interpreting light, producing energy, and making resource allocation choices for your survival. So picture this. Your mitochondria are like someone who doesn't have enough money coming in to pay all the bills. So what do? They pay the highest priority bills first, keeping your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your brain functioning. So without the right energy coming in, everything else gets a little compromised or even cut. And reproduction, that's a luxury expense that gets eliminated when the budget is tight. Your mitochondria are making intelligent financial decisions about energy allocation, prioritizing survival today over creating life tomorrow and 9 months from now. And here's how they decide. So mitochondria can make energy in two different ways. Efficient, high-yield ATP using oxygen throughout the electron transport chain, or rapid, inefficient, low-yield energy through what's known as glycolysis. The efficient route requires proper mineral cofactors like iron, copper, and magnesium, adequate oxygen, intact membranes, balanced chemistry. It's metabolically demanding to maintain, but it produces way more energy per fuel molecule. When the environment becomes unstable from stress, inflammation, toxins, nutrient depletion, nervous system threat, mitochondrial downshift, they throttle the electron transport chain, they increase glycolysis, they allow more electron leak, producing what's known as reactive oxygen species, which are not mistakes. They're signals telling the cell to shift into defense mode, activate immunity, and downregulate reproduction and conserve resources. Less efficient total ATP, but it's faster and more adaptable for survival. And when survival becomes chronic 24/7 for how many years, reproduction is going to stay paused. And that's the intelligent decision that your mitochondria are making based on signals from all of the four pillars. So when you zoom into any cell, you can see a couple hundred mitochondria, not the 2 or 3 that they show in textbooks. But these are ancient, intelligent bacteria with their own DNA that reproduce independently, having formed a symbiotic relationship roughly 2 billion years ago with other bacteria that became our cells eventually. At least that's the leading theory. And it makes a lot of sense based on what mitochondria are and how they function. I like to call them the microbiome within the cell because they are bacteria. It's an ecosystem within an ecosystem. And so now we have the microbiome, that ecosystem, and now we have the ecosystem within every single cell of your body with the mitochondria. There's different kinds of mitochondria even. And now we have these organisms that are helping you. The primary job of the mitochondria is creating energy from food and light. Every carbon-based nutrient, carbs, fats, proteins, gets broken down and ends up in your mitochondria producing ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a high-powered molecule because of the oxygens and its electric charge. But when you think about it, like, where did all this energy and all of our food come from? Ultimately, the sun, right? Because every carbon-based nutrient comes from either a plant or an animal that ate that plant, and all that energy comes from the sun. And that's where all energy starts. So all of this food that we're eating is stored light energy. So mitochondria absorb and interpret light energy both from the food that we eat and light directly as electromagnetic frequencies hitting your skin, entering your eyes, and they concentrate that energy between molecules to hold that electric charge very tight like a battery, like the most efficient battery that's ever been created. And they use that energy to build carbon-based cellular systems like cell membranes, enzymes, proteins, DNA, and all of the other parts of the cells known as organelles. Like, we think of photosynthesis as only for plants, but we are photosynthetic too. Vitamin D being the most obvious example. And per square centimeter, your mitochondria have 10,000 times more light energy density than the surface of the sun because how they're concentrating it. Like, you are literally a being of light, brighter and more complex than all of the sunrises and sunsets that you've ever seen. But like I said, mitochondria aren't just energy producers, they're also conscious decision makers because they're bacteria, living and adaptable. They're constantly asking, do we have enough energy to maintain life, create it, or do we need to conserve? And they communicate this conservation and protection using signals that show up as hormone chaos, because those are also just small carbon-based signaling molecules. Mitochondria also use minerals, like on the periodic table, like Legos. Magnesium, iron, copper, zinc, calcium, sodium, a lot more. And they use those to build the structure, function, and communication systems of every single cell because without minerals, cellular structure collapses like a raisin, neuroelectrical wiring shorts out because the cell is a battery and it isn't charged correctly, and cells compromise function. Mitochondria are the architects and construction crew, using mineral cofactors to build enzyme complex and create these cellular structures, organelles, enabling signaling. And then they also organize the water within the cell. So every cellular function depends on mitochondrial decisions, which are based on their environmental interpretation. And the structure of the cell itself, maintaining its shape, is fully dependent on how organized this water is within, which is based off of the quality of highly electrically charged atoms, which are called minerals and electrolytes. We'll talk about that later. And they're interacting with very electrically insulating materials, such as the cell membrane, which is nonpolar, where water and these electrolytes are charged electrical molecules and therefore polar. So it's these worlds that are interacting, the electrically insulating materials interacting with the electrically conductive materials. And together, those create the structure, function, and communication of every cell in the body. So when the water within this highly coordinated biological system exists in a gel-like state, very electrically conductive, it's maintained through the strategic distribution of these different arrangements of atoms, both charged and uncharged. Dr. Chris Palmer, a Harvard psychiatrist and neuroscientist, he makes a bold claim in his book called Brain Energy that nearly all mental illness is, at its root, is mitochondrial dysfunction showing up as different symptoms, which are often overlapping. When resources are abundant, minerals, nutrients, oxygen, natural light, safety, and relationships, mitochondria operate in abundance mode with efficient energy production, growth support, efficient toxin removal, and reproduction is prioritized. But when those resources are scarce, they shift into conservation mode by downregulating ATP because it's kind of expensive to make, and they use cheaper energy pathways. They're prioritizing your survival over growth and reproduction because those things are expensive. And here's where it matters for fertility. Most cells contain just a few hundred mitochondria. Your brain neurons contain a lot too because of the energy. But the female eggs are by far the most mitochondrial dense cells in the entire body, ranging anywhere from 100,000 to 600,000 per egg. Why? Because creating life requires massive amounts of energy for cell division, DNA replication, implantation, placenta formation, building an entire human from scratch, let alone the effects that it has on your body. Efficient energy production by the mitochondria determines egg quality, and lower mitochondrial function equals lower fertilization rates, also higher chromosomal abnormalities and higher miscarriage rates. Meaning if your mitochondria are in conservation mode, they cannot support the energy demands of creating life. And for men, it's the same story. Sperm cells are packed with mitochondria in that mid piece that powers them to swim. So without efficient function, you get poor motility. You also get DNA fragmentation that gets passed on, and mutations that aren't supportive of life, and then failed fertilization and implantation with the immune response. So you can spend thousands on support supplements, and many couples do, but if you don't know exactly what nutrients, what minerals, and what food to include for your unique biochemistry, then you're just kind of guessing and trusting influencers and their shiny objects. But every month that you're guessing is another month that egg quality declines and his sperm DNA fragments even further because we're not addressing the real issues. So coming up, I'll show you how to measure mitochondrial function in ways that your doctor never looks at. But mitochondria can't build anything without the raw materials. So we're going to talk about the periodic table. And these are often called minerals, at least some of the periodic table, but you might know them as electrolytes. And I'm going to tell you the whole picture right now because this is my expertise. When I first started teaching chemistry, my honors students would ask these brilliant questions that I couldn't fully answer yet. So I spent so many nights teaching myself the periodic table deeply enough to give them real answers that made sense, not just textbook regurgitation. I had a mentor early on who changed how I saw everything too. He didn't just teach me chemistry, he taught me to see the beauty hidden behind the details of the periodic table. He's the one who inspired me to get my master's degree in biochemistry. And then when grief hit suddenly and strong, the kind that really empties you out, I didn't know how to cope. So I distracted myself a bit by reading scientific research, late nights searching PubMed for answers to questions that I could not articulate even. And what I eventually discovered brought the periodic table to life in so many ways that I couldn't even imagine. Everything started making so much sense. Current scientific research mixed with ancient wisdom and what life looks like when you align with nature instead of fighting it. The laws of life, God and His creation, it's all connected. The atoms and quantum world aren't cold and lifeless. It's the energetic foundation of everything. And I trust the periodic table and its wisdom because of what humans have been able to do with this information. All of this stuff, everything around us, including wireless communication, and all the technology that we have is based off of the periodic table. So now what we're going to do is zoom into the atomic level, where the old map says the minerals are just trace nutrients that you need a little bit every once in a while, or they're just electrolytes in drink. But the new map says that they are actually controlling 99% of your body as they provide the raw materials for the cellular structure, function, and communication everywhere. So if you remember back to your high school chemistry class, then you would know that 99% of your body's atoms are just 5 what are called non-metals: hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. They form your macros, like proteins, carbs, and fats, and they make up all of your cellular structures, like membranes, DNA, proteins, enzymes, and other organelles, just mostly these 5 elements. But also they make up your hormones, like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. Those are all made up of those 5. All of your neurotransmitters are mostly those 5. And I mean, even most of these chemicals are just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They're just different arrangements of those atoms. Like glucose, if you remember the formula, C6H12O6. And cholesterol is a little bit bigger, but a little side note, a thing about cholesterol that everyone has wrong is that ingesting it is different than your body producing it. When your body makes a lot of it, like high cholesterol, it means that there's cellular inflammation and your body is addressing it by using cholesterol, which is a waxy substance used to protect those cells. And if you look at cholesterol and estrogen, they look nearly identical. And that's because estrogen is made from cholesterol. And what's also made from cholesterol? Cortisol, the stress hormone. And so all of that, all of what we just talked about, that's 99% of your body, those 5 elements. But it is the other 1% of your body, what we call the metals on the periodic table, that control how the entire 99% functions. And these have metallic characteristics, like what they do is they completely give away their negatively charged electrons through what are called ionic bonds, meaning that there's a full electron transfer from one atom to another, and this creates a positive and negative charge that generates electric fields. Like, you remember high school chemistry, right? And I'm talking about the metals like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Those are really like the big 4 that we need the most amount of. And they sit right next to each other on the periodic table. But it's also about the trace elements like zinc, iron, copper, manganese, selenium, iodine, chromium, and even molybdenum. These are the minerals controlling every enzyme, every hormone production, every structural protein, every cellular function, every electrical signal. These are the raw materials for everything to take place in your body. So imagine you have a plastic toy, like for kids. It's perfectly molded, everything fits together, but without batteries, it doesn't really function. And that's the difference between the 99% and the 1%. The carbon-based stuff, the vast non-metals versus the few metals. The plastic structure is made of carbon and hydrogen, mostly from the petroleum industry. The 1%, the minerals, are partly the batteries providing the electric power that makes everything function. This connects deeper than you think because the plastic toy is made from petroleum, which is chains of hydrocarbons, so it's just hydrogen and carbon. And guess what else is made from petroleum besides plastics? Agricultural chemicals like pesticides, personal care chemicals in your makeup, pharmaceutical drugs, household chemicals, food chemicals. Across the whole food system that we've got, there's chemicals involved, and other toxins like BPA, phthalates, glyphosate, fragrances. All of these are petroleum-based carbon compounds that are mimicking your body's carbon-based signaling molecules. They're relatively similar in size and shape, but they're synthetic and don't exactly fit right. So things get a little weird and your body interprets them as stress signals. And sometimes they fit into hormone receptors, like a key that's almost right shape, close enough to block the receptor or trigger a partial response, but it doesn't really work correctly. And this is why endocrine disruptors are everywhere. in plastics, pesticides, industrial chemicals, personal care products, because these petroleum-based carbon compounds are mimicking your carbon-based hormones, disrupting your messaging system. This is why it's not uncommon for young girls to have their first period at like 7 or 8. Now, these electromagnetically charged mineral atoms create electrical differences across cell membranes, between compartments, and especially within the layers of the mitochondria and throughout your tissues. Like, this is how your cells communicate, not only with direct messaging chemicals that are carbon-based, but also electromagnetic pulses, which is light energy on the electromagnetic spectrum. It's how your nervous system fires, how your heart beats, how your muscles contract, how your brain thinks. Your body is an electrical system with minerals as the conductor and water as the highly conductive medium through which all chemical reactions can take place. The minerals also act as cofactors for enzymes. Like, you think of an enzyme like a machine that's made of proteins, amino acids, beautifully structured, but it's unable to function without this cofactor, the mineral ion that sits in that active site and enables a chemical reaction to progress. This cofactor is the key that turns the machine on and the battery that keeps it on. Like, without zinc, the enzyme converting cholesterol to pregnenolone can't function. And without magnesium, over 300 enzymatic reactions stop, and energy production, and a good amount of magnesium is required to produce ATP. Without selenium and iodine, your thyroid can't convert T4 into active T3. But it's more than just turning enzymes on. Mitochondria use these charged minerals to organize the water inside of your cells. The water molecules organize into highly structured layers around the proteins, DNA, minerals, all the organelles, because water is a highly electrically charged molecule. They're like strong magnets that are interacting with each other. So this structured water is the medium through which all biochemical reactions take place, allowing proteins and enzymes to fold in the exact shapes in order to function. And when minerals organize this water correctly, they create the electrical grid where every cell, every mitochondria, every microbe is on the same network, able to send electromagnetic signals called biophotons constantly. This is how your body knows what's happening everywhere all at once. What, you think humans invented wireless communication? It's that life has always used these laws of nature for structure, function, and communication. And now humans can consciously use these laws for connection to each other. So, minerals create structure, conduct electricity, enable enzyme reactions, and organize water. So all cellular structure, function, and communication relies on the right ratios of these metals, the 1% controlling the 99%. But here's where things shift. Like, when you are chronically depleted in these minerals from eating food grown in depleted soil, chronic stress that's burning through these reserves, from gut infections that's blocking absorption, your body doesn't just shut down, it adapts through what's called ionic mimicry. And it works like this. Imagine your car's timing belt breaks down. That's the most critical part that synchronizes your engine, valves, and pistons so that things time up. And you're stranded without a replacement. So what do? You grab your pants belt and you rig it up. Does it work? Sort of. Poorly, with grinding noises, misfires, parts that are going to wear down fast. But it's better than nothing, right? Well, that's exactly how ionic mimicry works in your body. When you're chronically deficient in minerals, your body replaces them with heavy metals because of their atomic and charge similarities. And in today's industrial world, these heavy metals are everywhere, from our food, our water, our soil, and our air even. And your body uses them as substitutes. Zinc gets replaced with cadmium, significantly affecting reproductive organs. Magnesium with lead or aluminum, having a significant impact on energy and brain function. So these heavy metals are close enough to fit into active enzyme sites, conduct electrical signals, and organize water, but they don't work efficiently. Like, for example, an enzyme with magnesium functions at 100% efficiency, but with aluminum, it drops to maybe 20%, but that's better than nothing. And so now the shape of the enzyme is distorted, the reaction is slower, and the cell pays the price with irregular protein structures, slowed enzyme reactions, static in the electrical grid, and scrambled electromagnetic signal. This disrupts the structure, function, and communication of every cell using them, often creating subclinical and seemingly random disconnected symptoms. And here's what most people miss, like, they're not randomly toxic. They get into the cells with the same metal transporter ion systems as nutritive minerals, and they accumulate in tissues with the highest demand for the minerals that they're replacing, which is based off of your unique biochemistry and your story up until now. And this cascade continues. Cells using heavy metals become structurally unstable, where proteins don't fold correctly, enzymes malfunction, electrical signals distort, and structured water loses organization, causing cells to die faster. So now we have high turnover rates and cellular inflammation growing that is forcing your immune system to clean them up 24/7. And so, in my opinion, heavy metals are the primary driver of chronic cellular inflammation from the inside out. Not an infection like we talked about with the microbiome, but inefficient internal cellular function from mineral deficiency and heavy metal substitution. This is intelligent resource allocation while in scarcity mode. Your body choosing survival today over long-term health. And now modern medicine counts blood serum levels as a way to measure minerals and heavy metals flowing around in your blood, but that changes all the time. It's just a snapshot without really testing what's happening inside of your cells and what's being used and accumulated over time. They're not looking at what's causing the cellular stress in a variety of ways. They're just saying, yep, those cells are stressed out. And so in a little bit, I'll talk about the test that shows what's actually inside your cells, not just floating around in your blood. Because minerals don't get depleted randomly, they get depleted by the most upstream and most foundational layer of all. We're going to talk about what I call the quantum nervous system. So we've gone from larger organisms of the microbiome to within the cell, looking at the mitochondria, then to atoms and molecules, each layer deeper into how nature actually works, but now into the quantum level, the fabric of reality itself. And if you love the physics and spiritual layer, please stick with me. But if you don't, no problem. Just remember the main idea that your nervous system is the master switch that decides if you are safe enough or not safe enough based on all of your accumulated life experiences and all that we've talked about so far. So now from the atomic level, we're going to dive even deeper into nature and talk about some quantum mechanics. You ready? Where the old map says that stress is just mental, just relax, do some yoga, you'll be fine, just keep trying. But the new map says that your nervous system carries patterns from every moment that you did not feel safe or loved enough throughout childhood and even before you were born. Your nervous system was making survival decisions faster than you can think. And until we release and process what's stored in our bodies, your mind is going to have a hard time relaxing. So to get the full picture, because a lot of people think this is out there, let me take you back to the early 1900s when scientists were experimenting with light, trying to understand what it actually was. And they kept running into this question, is light a particle or is it a wave? And when they set up experiments in one way, light behaved like a particle, discrete packets of energy. That's what Einstein won a Nobel Prize for, the photoelectric effect. But when they set up experiments in another way called the double slit experiment, it behaved like a wave, frequencies spreading throughout space, and it depends on how far you zoom into nature. I like to think of it like a heartbeat on a graph. From far away, you can see the heartbeat as a particle, a singular event with a discrete peak, but when you zoom in closer, you see that the shape of that is made up of continuous vibrating waves. And that those waves are made out of vibrating strings, which gives us quantum string theory. And these quantum strings are theorized to be the most fundamental thing in the universe. We've known this for quite some time, for decades. And so you put all these different strings together and you get the quantum field theory. And that's why the word fabric is often used. Each particle in what's called the standard model in particle physics exists as a vibration of these different strings, and particles call these different fields dimensions. But here's one thing, nature knows and God exists outside of all of it. And our soul occupies different dimensions than what we are mostly familiar with in this physical reality. And what we're told in the Bible is that these dimensions that humans have access to are pretty special. And so we exist at the intersection between the physical and the spiritual, the material and the eternal, the particle and the wave. It's both, all of the time, everywhere. And your nervous system sits at the interface between these dimensions, receiving so much information. Now, here's a fun fact. At the moment of conception, there's a huge flash of light that we call the zinc flash. And it's when I believe that the soul of the child, which existed in wave form before in spirit form with God, and has now become particle form, and life on this planet in the physical space has begun. And with this, I also believe that our children choose their parents for many reasons that we might not know about. And that changes everything about parenting, which has been a whole journey for me. I could have a whole separate video about that. But so most people think that the nervous system is just nerves and neurons, brain, spinal cord, electrical signals, but it's so much more. Like your nervous system is a quantum field of information, sensing the energy of your environment through electromagnetic signals, photons of light, vibrational frequencies, both natural and synthetic human created. like EMFs, which tend to be way more chaotic. And biophotons are sent to and from the mitochondria and the microbiome, all in communication with chemical signals. And so your cells, your DNA, your entire body, we have so many antennas picking up these frequencies from your environment and internal state, with your soul existing across multiple layers simultaneously. Your nervous system reads information from layers that you can't consciously perceive, making decisions about safety, threat, resource availability, and reproductive viability. Like when somebody walks into the room, you can feel that vibrational difference because their energy has altered the vibrations of the room quite literally. That might be hard for some of our technologies to even measure. And here's the key: your nervous system doesn't just respond to what's happening right now in this current moment. It has carried patterns built up since childhood, since the womb, and since your ancestors, with fear, shame, guilt, isolation, unworthiness, perfectionism, all of these wounds of being loved imperfectly. Because most people still follow the narrative that we're separate from each other, separate from nature, and separate from God, which is so far from the truth. Nothing can separate us. And these aren't just emotions, these are encoded patterns stored within your nervous system and your body at the quantum level. What really helped me understand all this, especially about my childhood, was the Enneagram. It's a map of 9 core survival strategies that we learned as children when we didn't feel safe or loved enough. Like, I'm only safe if I'm perfect, I'm only safe if I'm in control, or I'm only safe if I'm needed. These are survival habits wired into your nervous system, running 24/7 in the background and influencing every single decision your body makes because of the accumulation of unsafe moments stored within your body, often manifesting itself as physical symptoms because it hasn't been processed properly as it's stored within your quantum fields. So when you're operating from a pattern of, I'm not good enough, I'm not safe enough, your nervous system interprets common situations as threat. Even if logically there's no danger, your quantum field might be broadcasting to every cell that we are not safe. And when your nervous system detects that threat, whether it's real or perceived, it activates the sympathetic nervous system in flight, fight, or freeze mode, where adrenaline surges, cortisol spikes, heart rate increases, blood flow redirects from digestion and reproduction to muscles and brain to deal with that stress, and so many other physiological changes. And ultimately, reproduction gets deprioritized completely because we're in a state of threat. Your body's only goal is immediate survival, not creating new life for tomorrow. But here's the problem in modern life. It's not that our nervous system can't tell the difference between a physical threat and a psychological one. It's that they all turn on the same biochemical pathways as a response, like a work deadline, a fight with your spouse, fear of your lost time. So when your body prioritizes cortisol production over the sex hormones in that biochemical fork, it steals some of the raw materials in order to deal with the stress. That we can't make enough progesterone because the raw material is being diverted to respond to stress, causing your luteal phase to shorten and implantation to fail even if fertilization happened. Chronic stress depletes your minerals, and it accelerates these rates since every cortisol production uses up so much magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, vitamin C, sodium, and potassium. It's a vicious downward spiral. And when you're mineral deficient, your nervous system becomes even more reactive. Without magnesium, we're more anxious, irritable, and easily stressed because it's being maybe replaced by aluminum. And then the cells aren't working correctly. Zinc is needed to produce GABA, the calming neurotransmitter. Without it, it's hard to calm down. That mineral depletion makes you even more stressed, cells deteriorate, and causing even more cellular inflammation. Like, do you see the whole picture here? Now, here's what most people don't understand about healing the nervous system is that it's not just in your head, it's in your body. The fascia, the connective tissue that wraps every single muscle, organ, and nerve is full of highly structured water that conducts electrical signals and stores information. So when you experience trauma, physical injury, emotional abandonment, fear, shame, guilt, isolation, any of these things, perpetuating the story of separation, that information is stored within your fascia, and you think you're alone, and your body remembers everything. This information changes the electrical charge, producing tension patterns and water molecule organization that gets disrupted, which is why you can release this trapped energy through body work and somatic practices, because you're releasing that information and processing it correctly, similar to what the digestive system does for food. And every ancient culture knows this, which is why movement was so critical for nervous system healing. Not just exercise, but in my life, we really emphasize play, especially with our children, and movement of all muscles, not just the few that you work out. And this is why we need flow and rhythm in our days, getting out of our head and into our body. When you move, dance, play, stretch, even shake, you're processing this energy in the way that your body wants to. And it discharges that stuck energy and tells your nervous system that we're safe, we're alive. As we incorporate play and laughter, because we are able to see the beauty in every single moment and everything around us, including ourselves within, our bodies learn that it's safe. And animals know this instinctively. Watch your dog shake after a stressful encounter next time, because it's discharging nervous system energy. But modern humans have forgotten how to do this, holding everything in our heads, our thoughts, our words. But it's in our fascia and our bodies as well. And soon I'll show you how we release what's stored in your fascia without years of talk therapy. And so this is what energetic alignment actually means. It's about alignment with who you really are, which requires you to love every part of yourself in your story, like God does. And right now, in this moment, you're watching this for a reason. This is your invitation to step into that. Because when you're hiding parts of yourself, when you're carrying shame about your body or guilt about the past decisions, or fear about not being enough, that creates what physicists call destructive interference. And your body interprets that as threat. Because if you can't even accept and love yourself, how can your body trust that it's safe in order to create life? That interference shows up everywhere. In the food choices you make from fear instead of nourishment, in staying up late scrolling to avoid feeling, in performing for your spouse instead of being present. But when you do the work to love all of you, to show up authentically, to release what's been stored in the body, the destructive interference becomes constructive resonance and can build you up and strengthen you. As iron sharpens iron, your body feels safe because you're finally safe with yourself. And that alignment with who you really are and who God created you to be, that's what allows your biology to shift from protection to creation. Your relationship with yourself is the most important. So when you understand how nature works, you stop needing other people to tell you what to do about your health. But you have to understand it first. Because how can you align with something that you don't understand? How would you know if advice from some influencer actually makes sense, or if someone's just guessing, or even if it's just straight up BS? When you understand these four pillars and how they created life in the first place, you become confident in every single health decision for the rest of your life. Not because you know everything, but because you know how to think about these things with this living framework. And that's what this really is. Not just getting you pregnant, but transforming you into someone who can lead your family into generational health. Like, think about what that confidence does to your nervous system. So, to sum it up, your nervous system is constantly asking, do I feel safe, nourished, resourced, energized, loved enough, including by yourself? And if the answer has a little bit of no in it, the signals in your quantum field say threat. If your childhood patterns say I'm not enough, if your fascia holds on to unprocessed trauma, your body chooses survival today over reproduction tomorrow. This is an intelligent adaptation. Your body is protecting you from bringing new life into this environment because it perceives it's unsafe in a variety of all these ways. And this is the cascade that we've been building towards. And so there you have it, the new map of biology. These four pillars are what created life in the first place. So to review, we have the microbiome, the junction between the outer world and the inner world, the organisms that are adapting to the overall environment, metabolizing hormones, producing neurotransmitters. And then mitochondria, which are ancient bacteria absorbing light using materials to build cells, deciding whether you have enough resources for abundance mode or do we need to downshift into conservation mode. Your minerals, the atomic foundation and electric grid. They organize structured water, conduct electrical signals, and when depleted, they're replaced by heavy metals, causing cellular dysfunction and inflammation, which is also a protective process. And then your quantum nervous system, your spirit and your soul, absorbing information, storing it physically, sensing the environment at the deepest level at all times, carrying childhood patterns throughout your life, making decisions about safety and reproduction. Chronic stress and inflammation means that minerals get used up quickly, and in response, it goes all the way back up the scale. Like, do you see how interconnected this is? All right, let's take a look at how interconnected this is. They all communicate in this cascade. Your nervous system with threat patterns depletes minerals through constant stress hormones. Without minerals, cells lose structure, function, and communication, and mitochondria can't produce energy efficiently and shift into conservation mode, resulting in heavy metal accumulation, causing cellular inflammation and stress signals. So now we have a new environment where the microbiome is going to adapt and can't maintain balance. So dysbiosis develops and absorption fails, and the dysbiotic microbiome sends inflammatory signals back up to your nervous system, confirming the threat and perpetuating the stress response in a steep downward spiral of your health. And none of this is really tested for in the standard medical system. And so you'll end up with some medical label and medication that does not address what needs to be addressed. And this creates even more problems because it's based off of the old map, like wasted money, time, and effort, because we were focused on the wrong things. This new map is a feedback loop, a living system making intelligent decisions to keep you alive. Do you see how the old approach, which says fertility is all about these carbon-based signaling molecules called hormones, is completely missing the point? But this new map shows us that fertility is about whether your body feels safe, resourced, and energized enough to create and sustain life. So when you understand this map, when you can see that your body isn't randomly refusing to work, but instead is making intelligent protective decisions based on real environmental inputs at every level of nature, then everything shifts. You stop fighting your body and start supporting it. You stop chasing symptoms and you start addressing the root causes in the right sequence for your biology. And so I need you to see that this is not a curse. This is not God withholding blessing from you. This is your body protecting you. This is your body speaking its truth. Every symptom, the bloating, the anxiety, the exhaustion, the irregular cycles, the negative pregnancy tests month after month, these are merciful warnings telling us that we need to make some big changes. And your body is saying, I can't create life right now because I'm barely surviving. So let's restore the foundations, address the root causes, and become safe, nourished, and resourced and energized enough, and then we can create. And so God designed your body to do all of this perfectly, to prioritize your healing before your baby comes into this world, before conception, to reveal what's actually happening so that you can repair things before passing it down, to humble yourself enough that you can finally stop and slow down and listen to what your body is saying for its own healing. Your struggle is not punishment. This is an invitation to see clearly, heal deeply, and build a foundation that will serve not just your baby, but your children's children and your entire family for generations. You see, most couples fight this by seeing symptoms as enemies to conquer, things to stop, obstacles to overcome, problems to force through IVF and synthetic hormones. But what if your symptoms are the most honest, loving thing that your body has ever done for you? What if they're saying, stop and listen? Like, this is your chance to become the healthiest version of yourself before becoming a parent. And how valuable is that? I know, because it has changed everything for our family. You stop becoming parents who would have raised children from depletion and unprocessed trauma. You're becoming parents who embody what Paul wrote. We consider our struggles as gain, not as loss. And so you're developing unshakable confidence from aligning with God, His creation, and His love. You're becoming parents who don't just react to symptoms or live in fear, but who understand how nature works and how to make decisions based off of deep wisdom instead of scattered anxiety. Parents who can hold space for their children's struggles without being consumed by them themselves. Who see challenge as invitations rather than punishments, who raise resilient children because you became resilient first, living where there are literally no bad days, no L's. This isn't just about getting pregnant. It's about becoming the kind of humans, the kind of parents who can steward health and wisdom for generations. And that only happens when you see this heartbreak as the gain it actually is. The refining fire making you into who you need to be before we become parents. And that is the best gift that you can give to your children. So, that was part one. So, there you have it. There is the entire map of biology. We could dive deeper, but we don't need to. But we still have a huge problem. You don't know where you are on this map. You don't know what your primary and secondary constraints are, let alone what to do about them. And you can't get to point B until we find point A. And so after I understood the 4 pillars and how they work together in this cascade, I needed a way to identify my primary constraints and root causes. So the question becomes, what does the data tell us to do? And that's why I created the 4 pillars scorecard. And it's a simple assessment that maps your symptoms, your health history, and your current state across all 4 pillars. It takes about 10 minutes to complete and gives you a preliminary view of which pillar is likely your main focus. By asking around 200 different questions around common and even surprising symptoms indicating the status of your 4 pillars. Questions like, do you constantly feel on edge? Do you hold tension in your jaw, your neck, and your shoulders? Do you feel anxious when logically you know you're safe? Do you crave salt, get muscle cramps at night, feel lightheaded standing up too quickly, wake up tired even after a full night's sleep? Do you crash sharply in the afternoon, feel cold all the time? Does your mood change with what you eat? Bloating or irregular bowel movements? Unpredictable food sensitivities? Skin issues, or do you feel puffy after meals? Using the scorecard, you can think of it like knowing which state you live on the US map. If the 4 pillars map is the whole country, then the scorecard tells you, hey, we're in Colorado or you're in Ohio. It's pretty valuable because you're not wandering aimlessly anymore. You have a little bit more direction. And you have a general location with general recommendations, which I discuss more in my 4 pillars training video that you can tap a few buttons below. But don't do that now. Watch the rest of this first. And so while you're figuring out what state you're in, now you might be thinking, you don't have time to wander around in general recommendations that haven't worked so far. You need to know your exact home address on this map right now so that we can start repairing things before another 6, 12, or 18 months pass. And this is where functional lab testing comes in to be laser focused. You see, standard blood testing gives us a snapshot of what's floating around in your bloodstream at one moment at a time, and it changes to the next moment because blood is a circulatory fluid, always changing. And blood levels don't tell us much about what's happening inside of your cells, like the reasons for cellular inflammation. It's just saying, yep, there's inflammation. Like, what does that tell us? So the medical establishment uses these blood markers to identify labels and then offer medication because they're working with the old map. These blood tests don't tell us what's happening over time or why things are the way that they are. And the markers themselves that they measure are downstream, which isn't a big deal, but we just have to know that. And they don't provide any specific recommendations either. They just offer a pill that tends to make things worse over time because the root causes aren't being addressed properly. They just offer a pill that tends to make things worse over time. Like when you take ibuprofen, it's not because you have an ibuprofen deficiency. And so like I said, that's where functional lab testing comes in. To test your function and how to improve function through a combination of different samples that gives us truly a holistic view of your place on the map. Hair testing shows accumulated cellular mineral ratios over 3 to 4 months because of how it grows. It also shows heavy metal burden being eliminated through the hair over time because hair is highly mineralized, and then they're no longer in circulation with the body. Hair tests also show the oxidation state of energy metabolism, your thyroid health, and the strength of your cellular batteries, as well as blood sugar regulation. Urine testing shows us how you're metabolizing certain nutrients, neurotransmitter production, hormone levels to see how strong the stress response is, detoxification capacity, and real-time mineral and heavy metal excretion. Saliva testing shows cortisol and hormone rhythms throughout the day and how your nervous system and endocrine system has responded to stress over time, in real time, and what's accumulated over your life. Stool testing shows DNA of the organisms in your gut, the inflammatory markers, digestive function, and estrogen metabolism. And we can use blood tests too. It's different kinds of data. We interpret it with that lens, knowing what these tests actually measure. And when we combine all these tests, we're not just seeing snapshots. We're looking at the entire movie, like how your body is functioning across time, across systems, and across all 4 pillars. We see exactly where the cascade is breaking down. We see your address on the map. Each test overlaps the others. Because remember, your mineral patterns affect mitochondrial output, your gut microbes influence estrogen metabolism, your stress hormones alter immune signaling, and your detox capacity shapes the inflammation levels. It's not like one pillar per test, it's one cohesive biological story. And when the data comes back, we're not just staring at numbers, we're seeing exactly how your body is prioritizing survival over reproduction and why. And once you see that pattern clearly, the guesswork disappears. Because now you're not trying random supplements, you're not experimenting, you're not hoping. You are restoring in sequence of what you need and what your body's telling you that it needs. So you might be thinking comprehensive functional testing sounds expensive and costs, a couple $1,000 for both partners. And I know that might sound expensive, but let me show you what it actually costs not to address these root causes. The fertility phase alone, like a couple years of random supplements, scattered appointments, costs about $15,000. Years of trying stuff. Throw in a couple rounds of IVF, forcing biology that isn't ready, another $50,000, now we're at $65,000. But what have you actually spent on things that don't work? And you still haven't addressed why your body isn't able to conceive. And if you don't address these root causes appropriately, they don't just disappear when you finally get pregnant, they can accelerate. So then your next 30 to 40 years will be managing symptoms for both of you. Her thyroid dysfunction, autoimmune flare ups, chronic fatigue, anxiety, weight gain, early menopause, neurodegenerative issues. And for him, testosterone decline, cardiovascular issues, metabolic problems, cognitive decline. These are not separate random problems. It's the same exact cascade that we've talked about. Now costing hundreds of thousands of dollars over 30 years in medication, specialists, treatment, just managing symptoms that didn't need to exist. And then your baby, they're going to inherit both parents' depleted minerals, dysbiotic guts, toxic burdens, and stress signals. That becomes colic, eczema, chronic infections, food sensitivities, developmental delays, compromised immunity, and a lifetime of managing chronic symptoms. So what we're really doing is spending upwards of multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime managing a cascade that never got addressed properly. Or you can spend a fraction of that to identify and address the real root causes, heal the foundation for both of you and your future babies, preventing most of these costs from ever existing, as well as having the confidence to navigate any health decision you have for the rest of your lives. The true cost is not just financial, though. It's lost time, accumulating stress, and compounding dysfunction. Like the math isn't even close. So when you combine all of this, we get a complete picture. We take all the data from both partners and identify your primary constraints, your exact point A, so that we even know how to leave the house properly to get on the road. This is about your unique biochemistry, and this tells us where you need to start based on your data, your story, and your biochemistry. But now you can do a lot of those functional tests elsewhere, but testing without correct interpretation is like having a map you can't read. The old approach sees lab results as isolated problems to fix, where every marker that's out of range requires a different protocol. And you end up with so many different things to do because every marker gets treated as its own independent issue, which is why people get overwhelmed with spending thousands on supplements while nothing really changes. The 4 pillars sees the exact same data as one story that your body has been writing your entire life. So when I read and interpret labs, I'm not only asking what's out of range, but where did the cascade break down? What are the upstream causes that are creating all these downstream effects? And what is your body actually trying to protect you from? And what do we need to let go of? Because once you understand the story, you don't need 30 different protocols. You need one strategic sequence that addresses root causes and lets everything downstream heal naturally. When we give the body exactly what it needs, it will take care of you. It can let go of what it doesn't need. And that's why the same test results in different hands gives you completely different answers. One approach keeps managing symptoms forever, while the other heals the foundation. Now, I spent 10 years teaching chemistry, biochemistry, environmental science, physics, and quantum mechanics. And it's all connected in ways that we don't even understand yet. I know how enzymes work, what minerals do at the cellular level, how important energetic alignment is. And more importantly, I've lived the 4 pillars. I've had doctors tell me everything seems normal when we knew something deeper was going on. I've reversed my own chronic metabolic problems and gut dysfunction by understanding this cascade. My wife has been doing the work alongside me this whole time and saw her own healing breakthroughs. I've helped family members, friends, and now clients and families around the nation. And when we look at your test results, we're not just seeing numbers. We're seeing your story that your body is telling us through what it needs exactly to feel safe, nourished, and energized enough to create life. That story tells us exactly where to start. So let me give you a specific example. We use the HTMA for the hair test, the hair tissue mineral analysis, for both partners. And the company is called Analytical Research Labs, and they're the only hair testing company that truly understands the atomic relationships between all of the minerals and interactions with the heavy metals, not just whether things are high or low. And here's what most practitioners get wrong. Just because aluminum is low on the hair test does not mean that the body is low in aluminum. It often means that aluminum is buried deep within the tissues and not being excreted. Then, on the second hair test, after mineral balancing, we see a rise in heavy metals because now they're being pushed out of the cell and into the hair where they're no longer in circulation doing damage around the body. We want heavy metals to come out into the hair. It's a part of the detox. We also use genetic tests to see what kind of nutrients we need. And for men, we use the legacy semen analysis, the most comprehensive sperm test measuring count, motility, morphology, DNA fragmentation, and oxidative stress markers. So the question isn't what supplements I should take, but what does the data tell us to do in every area of our lives? And the data, when interpreted correctly through the lens of the four pillars, always points to your point A and then tells us how to get to point B. Now you might be thinking this all sounds great in theory, but will it work for me? That's a fair question. And instead of success stories, because I know you're tired of hearing those and still asking yourself, will this work for me? I'll answer it by just saying, and hopefully we've answered that already, like the fact is that this is built for you. Like, what do you think the research says about addressing the root causes and upstream constraints? Dr. Kalia Waddles from the Institute of Functional Medicine says that, quote, I have shifted away from using the term infertility to subfertility because that better reflects what I see in practice. Fertility being a continuum with multiple factors, and oftentimes we can shift that. This is a message of hope and empowerment, end quote. So logically, when you test comprehensively, identify your specific constraints, and address things in the right sequence with the right map of biology, understanding how nature works, then things happen. And that's what happens when we work with biology instead of guessing. Because fertility isn't as much about fertility, it's actually more about health. And I have so much hope for you because you are so resilient, so strong, so adaptable, and God knows the desires of your heart for a vibrant and healthy family. So, real quick, I need you to just pause, take a break if you need, because what I'm about to show you next is the exact process to get you from point A to point B. But first I need to honestly ask you something. Like, who do you want to be just even 6 months from now? Are you still going to be a scattered fertility chaser, guessing based off of supplements and symptoms, trying random protocols from influencers, stuck in monthly hope and crash cycles, spending thousands with no strategic plan that was not built for you and your biochemistry, confused when everything tests normal, but you're still not pregnant and you're not getting real answers either? Or do you want to be a strategic fertility builder, someone who understands how nature works, who knows exactly where you are on the map, what your specific constraints are, and what's holding you back? Someone who follows a specific personalized strategic data-driven adjustable sequence. Someone who addresses root causes upstream instead of chasing downstream signals. Someone who builds a foundation of health, not just for pregnancy, but health for generations. Because here's the deeper truth. Scattered chasers see their symptoms as enemies. They're fighting their bodies. They're frustrated. They're angry. They're desperate to force conception. But strategic builders see their symptoms as teachers. They listen to their bodies. They're humble enough to admit, I don't know what's wrong, but my body does, and the data will help reveal it. One is fighting, the other is listening. One is demanding, one is surrendering. One is cursing the struggle, and the other is receiving the gift. Because blessed are the poor in spirit, those brought low enough to finally stop fighting and start listening, for theirs is the kingdom of God. And so what are you ready to become? The fact that you're still watching this tells me that you might already know the answer. You know what you're doing isn't working. You know there must be a better way, a more efficient way, a smarter way. So to recap, now you have the map. You understand the four pillars, how they work together in a cascade and in relationship. You know how we can find where you are on this map through comprehensive testing and expert interpretation. But here's the final piece. How do you get from where you are to where you want to go? Specifically, what does the data tell us to do once we understand the constraints? And how do we address that cascade in the right order so that your body shifts from protection mode to creation mode? And so that's what I'm going to show you next, how to do it. And I call it the four pillars system. And this is the exact three-phase process that we use to optimize fertility. And so here at Functional Chemistry, we use a 6-month program that helps couples identify these constraints and heal strategically through the four pillars so that they can conceive naturally without compromising their values and build a foundation for generational health, which is wealth, the ultimate wealth. And this works by doing exactly what we've talked about in a way that works with your biology instead of against it, creating the foundation not just for pregnancy, but for healthy pregnancy, healthy birth, healthy baby, and a family culture rooted in health and stewardship for generations. This isn't just about 6 months. This is about becoming a healthy family, understanding your body and environment so deeply that you can become confident in any decision for your family for the rest of your life. Like when you do this right, you don't just feel better, You start seeing objective changes first. Your sleep stabilizes, digestion becomes predictable, cycle signals shift, signal stress reactivity drops, energy becomes steady, you hold less tension in your muscles, you breathe deeper, you do things slower, more intentional. Your thoughts and words are more clear, you're more present. These are the early signs that the body is moving from protection mode to creation. So here's the exact three-phase process. In the first month, what we call the foundation and root cause discovery, a goal is to know exactly what's stopping, what's blocking your fertility with comprehensive lab data. So we run the gold standards of functional testing on both partners. These are mailed to you and you send samples back to the lab. I get the data and we start interpreting and mapping everything out. And during that waiting time, we'll have weekly meetings making sure that we're doing all the general recommendations first. And then within a few weeks, we'll get the lab data and start connecting all the dots. And not just from lab results in the scorecard, but your environment, your lived experience, and conversations with you. We create specific custom protocols. And then we'll have a results and recommendations call for both partners, where I walk you through every result in plain English and show you exactly what to address first, second, and third. So by the end of month one, you have a personalized protocol designed for your unique biochemistry, not generic advice that might have worked for other people. And this is when you stop being a scattered fertility chaser and start becoming a strategic fertility builder. Because now we know. And then phase two, strategic optimization, where the goal is to restore the 4 pillars, where we implement your personalized protocols, starting with the nervous system regulation and then mineral balancing. And kind of throughout it, we're restoring the mitochondrial function and later addressing the microbiome, unless there's something pressing. And we track progress through the Progress Without Pregnancy dashboard, looking at sleep quality, energy levels, cycle regularity, digestion, stress resilience, with measurable improvements every month, every week. Your partner uses the male responsibility dashboard with specific tasks, metrics, and accountability so that he's optimizing his health equally as well. We have weekly meetings where we adjust protocols based on data and direct messaging support while you're working as a team, seeing objective progress, building the foundation together. These are the most important months of your life before this child joins you. And then phase 3, with your body's optimizing every day through the 4 pillars, we support you through conception attempts with guidance on timing, early pregnancy nutrition, and first trimester protocols to reduce miscarriage risk. You are strategically creating the best conditions for conception and supporting early pregnancy with everything that your body needs exactly. So by the end of 6 months, it is a win-win situation. Either you're pregnant naturally, or you have absolute clarity on what's improving, what still needs support, and exactly what to do next. Now, I need to be honest with you about something. The testing and protocols and weekly coaching, that's essential for addressing your unique biochemistry. But there's another layer that's just as critical, and it's the part that most fertility programs completely miss. Before becoming parents to a newborn, you need to become different people. Because right now, you're carrying patterns you learned in childhood. Survival strategies, wounds from being loved imperfectly, fear and shame that you haven't processed. And if you don't address those before having kids, you're going to hand them down without even realizing it. Your relationship patterns and your disconnection from how God designed life to work in community. And that's why when we have enough people ready, we're going to launch a 10-week live group program where we do this deeper work. We're not just talking about supplements and protocols. We're learning how to create safety through morning light, sacred meals together, how to remove the performance anxiety that's killing your intimacy, how to identify the childhood wounds that's driving your current behaviors. We're aligning with God's heart and preparing you to parent from wholeness instead of from woundedness. This group runs alongside your personalized 6-month program. And together they transform you into the kind of parents that can steward not just fertility, but generational health and wisdom. So by the end of it, you're writing a letter to your future child about the healing journey that you walked so that they don't have to carry what you have carried. And so you're still watching this because you know you can conceive naturally, especially after all this. You just aren't getting real answers about what's blocking you. But I need to be real with you. Time is not neutral. The couples I talk to in their late 40s tell me through tears that they knew something was wrong years ago. They say, why didn't we get comprehensive testing when we still had the time? And what breaks my heart is that they're kind of right. They did kind of know deep down. They just kept hoping random solutions would eventually work while the fertility window closed. So if you spend the next 18 months doing what you've been doing, you won't just be older, Your ovarian reserve would have dropped, your sperm quality declined, the underlying cascade is worsened, chronic symptoms get worse, miscarriage chances increase, and then you would have spent tens of thousands of dollars on solutions that didn't address your actual root causes. Remember, the real cost isn't just money. It's passing down the stress patterns, depleted minerals, gut dysbiosis to your children, spending decades managing autoimmune conditions and hormone chaos that started because the foundation was never restored, not making your environment cleaner, and not knowing exactly which food and supplements you need for your unique biochemistry. Right now, you have an opportunity to draw the line. This is it. No more guessing. We are going to find out what's going on and repair it strategically. Or you can keep hoping it works out. It's up to you. No pressure. But hope without strategy just burns that time that you don't get back. So we have two paths. You can spend the next year researching which labs to order, trying to interpret biochemistry you aren't trained in, guessing at supplements, burning money on testing, plus protocols that you're not really sure about. That worked for somebody else, but not for you. You can be stuck in analysis paralysis. Or we can do the second path, the 4 pillars path. Absolute clarity on what's holding you back. 6 months of strategic protocols customized to your data and adjusted monthly with weekly meetings. Measurable progress beyond pregnancy tests. And either you're pregnant naturally or you have complete clarity on what's improving and exactly what to do next. One path is slow, expensive, and isolating. The other is strategic, supported, and clear. Where do you want to be at the end of just 6 months? And so most couples who watch this aren't going to do much. They'll stay scattered fertility chasers, confused, overwhelmed, stuck in monthly grief cycles, never getting real answers. But if you want to be one of the rare and few families to become healthy and to understand your body, to conceive naturally and raise healthy children rooted in God's design, when are you going to make that decision to do things the right way? Today could be that day that you put an end to the confusion. Like, if you're serious, please click the button below to DM me fertility plan, and I'll send you the full breakdown with what's included in the program, the investment and payment options even, and the 3-phase process step by step, and then an application to see if you're a good fit. I won't be heckling you or chasing you, so no pressure. Choice is yours. I can only show you the door, but you are the one that has to walk through it. So, thank you so much for watching this. I really appreciate it. I hope it was valuable to you. And if this was meaningful and you learned a lot, please let me know. DM me your review. Send this to someone who might need it. And so the link to DM me fertility plan is directly below this video, and I'll see you on the other side.